Welcome to the premiere of our sportscast of Denver Sports. Our working title is Denver Sports with Coach Joe and Rob. Who knows how long this will last? Hopefully longer than Russell Wilson's career in Denver.
Yeah.
I'm Rob Blasi, and with me today is Coach Joe White. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Rob. I'm kind of looking forward to this. It's been on my radar for a long time, and I'm excited about it.
Absolutely. Today we're going to talk all things Denver Broncos. How many wins will the Broncos get? How does getting putting on the trade block impact you? And do you care about preseason football games? But first, Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. Coach, can Russell Wilson rebound this year? What are your thoughts?
There's no doubt he can. I think, to be honest with you, last year was not good. From the first game on, the decision making and so forth from the head coach and the staff just wasn't there. He it just wasn't a good fit. To be honest with you, with the offensive line and the play calling and the decision making and I go back to them letting Russell Wilson bring his own quarterback coach on campus there and have his entourage there on campus and everything else and his own office and everything. It just wasn't a good mix. And I'm a big culture guy, and I think that hurt their culture from the beginning, and it showed. And I think what Sean Payton is doing is kind of reeling that in and making sure that it's his own.
Creating the culture as his own. So, can Sean Payton then save Russ, or is Russ going to save himself? Who's fixing Russ?
Russ is going to fix Russ, but I think the offensive line is going to help fix Russ. I think he's got great wide receivers, to be honest with you. I think that the wide receiver group can fix Russ.
Okay.
But I think Sean Payton can fix Russ because he's going to bring some discipline to the building and to Russ himself.
No, that makes sense. You've been a coach, and you've have you ever coached a team, like have you ever taken over a team that's had a rough year the year before? They're like, "Hey, Coach Joe, come help fix our program." Have you ever been a part of that?
Not necessarily, but I've started programs from scratch.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, Rob. I think that's what Sean Payton's doing this year. I
Do
think
you think it's easier to start from scratch than to start with a bad culture?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But I also think Sean Payton is treating it like he's starting from scratch.
Yeah.
I think he got rid of everything and everything that was part of the culture last year is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And I think he did it right. Be honest with you, the comments he made last week, should he have made him? Should he have not made him public? But realistically, that's what really was going on there. And he had to fix that. He had to get rid of that. He had to bring in a whole brand new culture, a professional culture, a culture that was going to help them be a professional football organization like they used to be. And when you look at the Broncos over the years, I really don't think it's that big of a talent difference with some of the teams they've played. But since Pat Bowlen got sick and then unfortunately passed away, the culture in that building has gone downhill.
Do you think culture makes that, like, what is, like, culture versus talent? Like, obviously, I'm a basketball guy, and if we're coaching against each other in a basketball game, and you have all 6'8" guys, and I have all 5'8" guys, I may have great culture, you may have bad culture, but you know what? The odds are still going to be in your favor, Coach.
Yeah, they are, but I still think in the long run, culture wins, and the right culture wins. When you look at teams like the Atlanta Braves, and you look at teams that have just consistently won through and through, and they can turn rosters over and they can still win. The Pittsburgh Steelers,
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows that when you go play Pittsburgh, you have to you're in for a battle every time to win the game. And they're always in playoff contention, no matter what happens. They turn the roster over. It's a culture. It's a culture that people live in and people adhere to. The New England Patriots, whether you like them, don't like them, with Belichick, it's he's a different dude, but he has a culture there and that culture wins. And when you have a bad culture, that culture is going to lose. And the Broncos have had a bad culture.
I think it's a mixture of bad culture, but I also don't think the roster depth is there. They have, like, to get Russ, what they have to give up almost 7 starting players, depending how you rate certain guys. And they're assuming they hit on their first and second round picks that they gave up for Russ. So it's like their depth is horribly lost. Now, quarterback's the most important position in the room. So I'm not going to argue, you got to do what it takes to go get a starting quarterback in the league. But you kind of gave up. And it's not just the depth. It's like when some guy goes down, then the backup goes in for a couple plays or even a couple games. It's like, how long can they withstand, especially in such a violent game like football?
Yeah, I think they fixed some of that with some of the free agent signings they had on the offensive line this year.
Okay.
But I think this goes back, Rob, a couple years. When you look at since Peyton Manning retired,
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of quarterbacks that have gone through Denver,
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of quarterbacks that they did not develop. I still think Drew, I know people think I'm nuts about this, but I still think Drew Lock's going to could be a good quarterback in the NFL if he's in the right system and has the right culture and the right coaching.
I've heard from some sources in Seattle that they think he's the next guy after Geno Smith. Like, they're not trying to put Geno Smith on a second big deal unless, like, Geno Smith just explodes. Like, they're kind of grooming Drew Lock to be the next starting quarterback the Seattle Seahawks in a year or two.
Yeah, he has a ton of talent. I mean, you look at the first 5 games he played as a rookie when they put him in there. I mean, they were like 4-1. He had great stats and everything else. But if you don't have the right people in place to help him develop,
oh yeah,
then it's not going to happen. And my whole take on it was they gave up too early on him. They didn't have the right people in place to develop him. And when you did that and you traded all those picks away, and then you talk about depth, how about the depth of drafting Chubb 5th overall, and he's not even in your organization 4 years later?
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. Like, so the question I've heard a lot with him is, like, is he considered a bust? Because he never got the second contract with the original team that drafted him. He was injury prone. Can injury proneness make you a bust?
I don't think it makes you a bust. I think he had a chance to break out of it. We'll see how it goes this year, but the bottom line is it was a bad draft pick. They picked him over the quarterback in Buffalo,
Josh Allen.
Yeah, They picked him. So when you look back at it, realistically, you had a top 5 draft pick who's now not on your roster, and you got nothing for him. Actually, what they got for him was Sean Payton, the coach. That's who they got.
Yeah,
and that when I look at that, I'm just like, when you talk about depth, you had chances to gain depth and so forth.
Right.
But if you can't draft right, and you can't, I'm not even so sure it's not you can't draft right. You can't develop right, and you don't put them in the right culture and the right systems, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, it's a huge point there. So, how many games this year do the Broncos need to win to keep Russ? Do you think there's a chance they could move on from Russ and just take the cap hit and move on from Russ?
I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance because Sean Payton is not going to have a lot of patience with a lot of that stuff. He doesn't want to lose. He doesn't like to lose, and he's not going to lose. It showed through his time in. People forget how bad New Orleans was before he got there, and how bad they were for years and years.
Oh, they were like the paper bag over the head fan group.
Well, they were brutal.
Probably on par with the Lions.
Yeah, I would say that. And he came in, changed the whole culture, and they were a winning organization for every year that he was there. And I believe that's what's going to happen here. And if you're not going to fit in that culture and you're not going to be part of that winning culture, he will get rid of you.
So how many wins do the Broncos need? Like, what is there a number in your head? You're going, like, if the Broncos only, if they miss the playoffs, if they only win 4 games, 5, like, what's the marker where you go?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
How many games do they got to win?
I think they got to win 9.
9?
Yeah. If they have a season like last year with the win-loss record like last year, I don't think they go another direction. They have to. it's not working for 2 years in a row. And I look at it like this, Rob. They have, in my opinion, I went to the Chiefs game last year, sitting in the end zone. I'm watching the whole game.
Yep.
See the end zone view. Jerry Jeudy was open every single play. There was absolutely no one that could cover him in that game. And I watch him over time. And, people keep saying, well, Jerry Jeudy hasn't done anything. You have to get Jerry Jeudy the ball, and Courtland Sutton, I've been, everything I hear about him this year is he's kind of back to the Courtland Sutton of old.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm hearing too.
And I know that Tim Patrick's gone this year and that hurts, but they have some dudes, man. They have some guys that can play. And you have to be able to get them the ball so that they can play. You have to get Jerry Jeudy the ball in space. You have to get Courtland Sutton, as a possession receiver that can get you to the first down. But you have to have a line that can protect your quarterback to give him the time to throw to those people and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone got the ball to Jerry Jeudy, like in the Chiefs game last year, he went off. I mean, he had an unbelievable game. He's an unbelievable talent that, again, because of the system and because of their culture, just hasn't flourished yet. I don't necessarily blame him, to be honest with you.
No, it's an interesting thought there with because this is his third coach in 3 years in the pros here. So it'll be interesting to see what Jerry Jeudy can do. But how good can the Broncos be? How important is the preseason for the Broncos? That coming up. But first, we're the Fiduciary Sports Show, Joe. We're just in it for the listeners. We're going to give you our honest opinion, our honest thoughts, but Coach Pete is your financial fiduciary. What that means is he's looking out for your best interest, not, his interest and how he can help you out, but what your best interest is getting toward retirement. We want to thank America's Wealth Financial Income Coach, Coach Pete DeRuda, founding partner in Capital Financial. If you're nearing retirement or just have questions on your future retirement income, reach out to Coach Pete and his team at Capital Financial, 877-359-1969, or go to retirementhelpcenter.com. Free retirement information as well. That's 877-359-1969 in the description here as well if you missed that. So feel free to take a look, click on that and see the information there as well. But Coach Joe, how good can the Broncos be this year? The Broncos' first preseason game is tomorrow, 8:00 in Arizona versus the Cardinals. Last I checked, Denver's favored by 5.5 with the over-under at 37.5. How much weight do you put on preseason games, Coach?
This year, a lot. There's a lot of people that need to show Coach Payton and that new staff what they can do in game situation. There's a lot of players that are really good in practice. I used to call them the dummy scrimmage All-Americans and so forth. But, when you get into a preseason, especially one with a whole new coaching staff, again, the whole new culture that Sean Payton's bringing in, he wants to see who can compete, who's going to be their best when their best is needed in a game-type situation. So I think this preseason is probably one of the most important ones we've had in a while. Is it important for them to win? I believe it is. Again, you're trying to establish a culture of winning. You don't want to go down there and get blown out or something like that. And the mindset is, here we go again, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
You want to set the mindset and set the standard right now or tomorrow night. And I know it's the first out of 3 preseason games, but I think it's hugely important for individual players and for the Broncos organization as a whole, just to gain back that winning culture.
What I hear from what I heard out of Sean Payton is they're looking at 12 to 15 plays from the starters right out the gate, which could be about a quarters for the offense, give or take. If they go 3 and out 3 times, you're only getting 9 plays, but could be about a quarter there. Hopefully they get a couple first downs. But what do you want to see out of Friday's preseason game? Well, because they're only playing a select amount of plays. What would you define success tomorrow with if you saw?
Number 1, no pre-snap penalties.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's number 1.
Oh, yeah.
Number 2, just being crisp in their execution. You got a 5-yard out and you're trying to complete that pass to get 5 yards, complete it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put yourself in 3rd and 8s and 3rd and 10s and so forth. We want to make sure that we are making sure that we're in good position all the time down the field in terms of down and distance. We don't want to get ourselves backed up. We're always just think about last year. How many
Yeah.
times were we 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, and just
were you at the first home game last year? I think it was against Houston. Was it Houston, the first home game with Russell Wilson?
I wasn't at it. I watched it, but
I was there, and it was incredibly entertaining to hear the people start counting down the play clock.
Yeah, amazing. We're not going to see that this year, Rob. That ain't going to happen.
Is that a Coach Joe promise? Like,
yes, that is a promise that you will not see that. I can almost guarantee that 100%. You ain't going to see that this year with this.
It was like a basketball game there where they're counting down the shot clock, and you're just like, it's for the home team too.
No, Rob, I'll tell you what it was. It was embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
That was a professional football game that we were watching, and that was happening. It blows my mind when you sit there and think about all the coaches on that staff. All they do, you hear about it all the time. They have to sleep in the facility because they're so busy and they can't leave and they can't go home because they got a game plan and they got to get ready and they're 24/7 and blah blah blah. And we get out to the game and they can't even get a play in on time, and the fans have to start. You got me going now. They have to start counting down the play clock, and I'm like, that's all they do, 24/7. They can't even go home. They have to sleep at the facility because they're so busy getting ready for the game, and the game comes and they can't even get a playoff on time. Yeah, it was a nightmare joke last year.
Could you imagine? Like, you just spent what, $4.6 billion on it, and you're going like, we can't even get a playoff.
No,
like, what is going on here? So, but like, preseason is also one of those things when, once again, being a basketball coach, you always like getting the reps. You don't really worry about it. It's not a win-loss thing. It's about getting good reps. But like in football, being a violent game, do you worry about injuries to players like in preseason? Because you were a baseball guy. Like, do you worry about wearing guys' arms out in the start of a long season?
Yeah, I do. I coached football for 30 years as well.
Oh, okay.
And every, preseason we had a inter-squad scrimmage and then a scrimmage against another team.
Yeah.
And you're always worried about that. But it's part of the game, and you can't let it.
As a basketball coach, I was always at the high school football games, watching my basketball players play football.
Yeah.
And they're just like, unless it's a catastrophic injury, they'll at least be back after Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, they're like, all of a sudden you see someone with their arm bending down where they can scratch below their kneecap. You're like, oh, well, there's a collarbone. We won't see it. He won't be getting shots up for a while.
Well, I'll be honest. You're going to get me on another rant here. This is my other rant for professional football.
Yeah.
When you watch those guys out there playing, just notice this the other tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Notice how small their shoulder pads are now. Notice how they don't wear hardly any pads in their pants anymore.
Yeah.
All they talk about is player safety, but they don't make them wear full shoulder pads that cover their shoulders. They don't make them wear pads in their pants. That protects not only the person getting hit, but the person hitting that person. Because when they hit another person with pads, that blow
absorbs the impact.
Yeah. And they don't make them do that. Aaron Rodgers wears a helmet that's 15 years old and doesn't wear a mouthpiece. Yet if you hit him on close to the head, you get a 15-yard penalty because they're trying to protect him. Why doesn't he try to protect himself? They sit there and they talk about that. And so when you talk about injuries, if I'm paying a guy $15 million a year to play for me, I'm going to make sure that he has pads that fit his shoulders and all that kind of stuff.
But coach, it slows me down. I'm a fast guy.
No,
I'm the fast guy. It slows me down, coach.
No,
that
doesn't fly with me.
You pay me for my speed, coach. You pay me for my speed. I got to be fast.
I don't know.
Have you ever had guys that are better? We used to better in games than in practice. Like, we used to call them gamers, where like, whether it was an effort issue or just like they're more instinctually better in games. Like, they're just reacting more. Like, how did you coach those guys? Like, they can just go, oh, they'll be fine in the game, but practice it's brutal.
Well, I always said this. I wanted my practices to be hard, so the games were easy. So if you're not going to practice hard and go through everything that we do hard, then I got a problem with that.
But like for me, it was basketball. Like, maybe for you, it was with your baseball guys or some of your football guys. But like you run your inbound play and they never make the shot they're supposed to make. But it's practice, and you're like, and still work on the shot. Then game comes, they don't miss. And so you're trying to judge practice versus a game. You're like, well, I trust him. He's going to, in the game he makes it, but in practice, we're celebrating making, 1 out of 4, which is really ain't all that great.
Yeah, that's hard. I get it. It's hard, but that's again why they're doing this preseason games.
Yeah.
And that's why last year when he didn't play any of the starters was a joke. Because as a coach, what you want to do is you want to be able to see who those guys are that are going to make the catch. I go back to Terrell Davis. Terrell Davis was about ready to quit. I don't know if you've ever heard that story, but he was about ready to leave Japan. They were playing in Japan against the 49ers in the preseason game. And before the game, he didn't think he was going to get a play. He was extreme running back and all that stuff. He called home and said he was coming home before the game, and he ended up staying. They put him on the special teams, and lo and behold, he goes down there and blows the receiver up who got the ball, and that was the start of his career. What he showed the coaches right there is, I'm a gamer. I can play this game in a game type situation, and that's why you use preseason. You have to see who the gamers are, who can play when it really matters.
No, absolutely. So, Coach, coming up, I'm going to put you on the spot. We're going to go through the Broncos schedule.
Okay.
And you're going to tell me how many wins, which games they're going to win, which games they're going to lose. I know it's a little early predictions, but who doesn't like a little early predictions? So we're doing that here in just a moment. But I want to talk about Bruton's Books. Bruton's Books is back for the 2nd annual golf outing in efforts to aid literacy in the Denver Public Schools youth. Their efforts of the foundation and mission are to improve literacy amongst the children, to set them up for success. They believe that great readers make great leaders and can ultimately change the world one page, one chapter, one book at a time. It is with your support they are able to help address accessibility to books and implement the future tutoring programs. If you're interested in helping them out, go to their website, brutonsbooks.org. They have a golf outing September 19th this year at Green Valley Ranch Golf Club out here in the Denver area. So go brutonsbooks.org/golf if you want to sign up for that. Be a sponsor of it. Be a fun event with David Bruton's Books. David Bruton's a good guy, so it'll be fun to see what they can do there. But we're going to, Coach Joe, see what you have with the picks here, okay? The early prediction, we'll keep track of this and see how we're going. So we're not going to worry about preseason predictions because I don't care about preseason.
Yeah,
picks.
I don't care
So I'll probably take the under still in the preseason games. Week 1, Coach, the Broncos are playing the Raiders in it's in Denver. Our first 2 games are in Denver. Who you got?
I have the Broncos winning that game. I think I don't talk about culture. Not a Josh McDaniels fan, and I think the Broncos are gonna. I think they're gonna beat them pretty good. Be honest.
I think you're right there. I think if there's anything that's helping the Broncos out this year, the first 2 games, because they got Washington Commanders here in Denver too. If there's 2 dysfunctional teams they get to start with,
yeah,
they're probably the 2 more dysfunctional teams than the Broncos
at home.
Yes,
at home. So I have them winning both their first 2 games against the Raiders and the Commanders.
And then the fun one is week 3. They're going to Miami, Coach, in September, probably more of the potentially warmer time of the year still. It's Southern Florida with a AFC contender.
That's a loss.
Oh, it's easy loss. I'm a Dolphin fan too. So
yeah, that's a loss. I don't think they can go down there in that heat and humidity, withstand the talent that the Dolphins have. I'm a big fan of the Dolphins coach too. He went to Smoky Hill High School here in Denver.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Very smart guy, and I just think that I think that's a loss.
What about week 4, 1st of October again? It's in Chicago against the Bears.
That was one, Rob, I was looking at. I've been looking at that, to be honest with you, a couple times, and I'm having a hard time with that one. I do think they will win that game because I think their defense will kind of confuse Chicago a little bit, but I think they will win that game. And to me, that's going to be kind of a tall tale. It's going to tell us what the Broncos are going to do for the season, because that's a game that is kind of a borderline game. because they're on the road. If they're at home, I would be picking them for sure. But if they can go into Chicago and get that win, I think that's a huge boost for them.
I have that as a loss. I think going into Chicago, I think Justin Fields is going to be much improved. I think they won't be able to stop their offensive attack. I think Chicago is much improved, and I just don't have the faith in the Broncos yet this year. They gotta prove it to me first, Coach.
Okay.
I'm not gonna. So after I called the first quarter, the first 4 weeks, you got them at 3-1. I got them at 2-2, which probably either way, however it lands at 2-2 or 3-1, they're probably pretty happy to get through the first 4 games.
Yeah.
At least above 500.
Yeah, the Chicago game's big. It's a big turning point for them. I really think that's a game to really watch.
It's one they should win if they're a legitimate playoff team.
Yes, exactly.
But I just don't, unless I see it in, the first 2 weeks where you just take care of business, like you've had it where you look at your schedule. I know coaches always go like one game at a time, but we all look at the schedule.
Yeah.
You're going, that should be a win. That should be a win. Like, like I always broke it up. Like you have your home teams and that, you should win every time you play them at your place. Then you have the ones on the road. Yeah, we should win every time we play them at their place. Then you have the ones like at their place, it's 60-40. They're probably a little bit, but if they're at our place, we'd beat them. Then you have the ones that you're just going into the juggernauts. You're like, well, we need a miracle for that one.
Yeah.
And the Bears should be one. And that's where I put them as like, if it was like you said, if it was in Denver, probably have the Broncos winning that one. But on the road, I just don't have it yet. What about, this is the fun one, week 5, start of quarter 2, the Jets and Aaron Rodgers.
We win that game. Broncos win that game.
You think so?
Home. I do. I think they'll rally around Sean Payton. I know the Jets are going to come in with a little piss and vinegar because of what Sean Payton said and everything else. But bottom line is this: once the ball is kicked off, all that stuff doesn't matter. And I think the Broncos are better. I think they will be better, and I think they will win that game.
I'll take the loss on that one. I think the Jets are way more talented than their record last year proved. And now with the addition of Aaron Rodgers, I think they're going to mow through some AFC teams. And I think one of those teams is the Broncos. The short week, Thursday night game against the Chiefs.
Loss. That's not even a question. I don't even know if they're home or away on that one. I can't remember. I know they played the Chiefs twice in the first.
They're in Kansas City for that one. Luckily, at least it's a short trip, but I just don't.
No, they're done.
I just don't.
They have no chance.
I
would like to see them beat them. It's amazing to me how many
15 times in a row.
How that happens in professional sports is beyond me, but I think it's
how it happens. It's because the other team is just that much better.
Yeah,
and it's like what you're talking about, culture and all those things. It's the Chiefs.
They know they're going to win.
They also have one of the best players in the game. That kind of helps.
Yeah.
So, all right, going back now to week 7, we're on October 22nd against the Packers. Jordan Love led Packers
at home
in Denver. Yes.
Yeah, Denver wins that one. Denver wins that one for sure.
I agree. I think it's as much of a rookie quarterback that's been in the league for 3 years. He'll have a rough year, but I think our defense is enough to stop a.
Yeah. Plus, we got a little time to. A Thursday night coming all the way back to Sunday, so we got a little rest time there. I think we win that game.
Last game before going into the bye, we play the Chiefs again in Denver.
Loss.
I
can't. As much as I would want to pick a win there, I think they have a chance. Like I said, I was at the Chiefs game last year. We almost did it, and now that we have a coach that knows what he's doing, I think we have a better chance. But Mahomes factor is just weighs on you. It's like a 70-pound weight on your back, knowing that he's coming into town. It's like he can win at any time.
Absolutely. So now we got the bye week in week 9 there. So they've played 8 games. You have them at 5-3. I have them at 3-5.
Ooh, wow.
So now we're coming back off the bye November 13th in Buffalo.
Loss.
Monday night. Now, if you think they're supposed to be a playoff team, shouldn't they? Every playoff team you've had, you got a loss against the Dolphins, the Chiefs, and the Chiefs. Like the Jets, you guess you have them winning, which the Jets should. I mean, they may not be a playoff team in their division.
Yeah.
Between the Bills and Miami, they could, whoever wins that division or comes in second may not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I just don't see Denver flying all the way to Buffalo and winning that game. The other part of it is I still think Josh Allen has something in his craw about not being picked by Denver, and
That's
he's
that's
going to
probably
do
fair.
everything he can. I believe in that stuff. The great athletes always want to prove you wrong, and I think that's what he's going to do to Denver for his career.
No, absolutely. Then week 11 Vikings
That's
in
at
Denver.
that's
In Denver.
home.
Yep.
I think they win that game. I really do. I like when they play at home. I think it's hard for teams to come in here and play. I think the Broncos. I think again. I think the Broncos have some really good talent. Their defense is really good, and I think they win that game easily. To be honest with you.
Easily. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oof.
You,
This is one of those toss up ones for me because I think the Vikings and the Broncos are kind of like an opposite trajectories. Like I want the Broncos to do better. I want Russell Wilson to do better. I think the Vikings have been in a bad division that they only had to really compete against Aaron Rodgers for a long time. But I think the Bears are better. I think the Lions are clearly better. And the Packers are just a wild card with Jordan Love. So like I see them on a trajectory down where the Broncos are going up, but they're kind of like in the same spot. It's just a matter
okay.
of which way the organization goes. Like
I'll,
I
I'll I'll be honest with you. I think it's going to be easier because they don't have to face Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook's a game changer.
That's a good point. But yeah, and if did you watch that quarterback special, the
Yes,
Omaha production? What
it
do you
was
think of Kirk
awesome.
Cousins? Yeah, wasn't that
I
great?
like Kirk Cousins. I'll be honest with you. I think he's a solid professional quarterback. I think he gets kind of a bad rap. If you watch that show, you can see he just gets pounded last year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he got hammered, and the guts that he had to come back and keep playing in some of those games was amazing to me. I'm a big fan of his. I
Yeah,
think
no,
he's a good player.
yeah, and that's why I'm going to take the loss for the Broncos there.
Okay,
So, you're way more optimistic than I am, Coach.
I
That
am.
is for sure.
I like our defense.
See, okay, I'll pick on you on that. Like, I think our defense is overrated. I think we have a great defensive coach this year. I think we've got good defenses, but when they go, hey, if we get 14, we're in a good place to win. We probably only need 13. We just need to keep kicking field goals, and we'll probably beat this team.
Yeah.
So you're not pushing the ball. You're not doing the things like when you play the Chiefs, you're like, we probably need 28 to 30 points to win. So you're making different decisions.
Yeah,
And so
I see that.
I just don't think I think their offense has sabotaged their defense in multiple ways. Like their defense could be good. Like Justin Simmons is probably the best safety, but it's also, and they got the great corner in Surtain. But like
Yeah,
if you can't get to the quarterback, it doesn't really matter.
well, a lot of it depends on Randy Gregory. To be
Oh
honest
yeah.
with you, and I am still a little frustrated with that signing. When you could have gone and got Vaughn back here,
Vaughn didn't want to come back here.
but well, I don't know. I mean,
He wants rings. He went to Buffalo to get a ring.
yeah, but it looks like they signed Randy Gregory over Vaughn, and Randy Gregory's never on the field.
Yeah, he's injury prone.
And it's like, okay, you got to be on the field for how much they're paying you, and I don't know. I still think their defense is pretty good. I think they have maybe the best corner in the league. And
I think our defense is pretty okay.
Okay.
I
got that.
I just don't think it's as good as advertised. It's
the D lineman they signed from Arizona, Allen. I think he's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, but I think everyone they signed you can game plan for still. I don't think
Okay.
I don't think they have I just don't think, and they don't have the depth because they don't, like the guy that got suspended for gambling. They just don't have the depth. So, a few snaps in, like you might have a great first half, first quarter, but then as the game wears on, you can't get to the quarterback in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So we're on to the Browns in week 12, November 26th, here in Denver. What are your thoughts?
They win that game at home against the Browns. The Browns, again, I know this has been a recurring theme, and you've heard it from me 100 times already today. Zero culture in the Browns organization. They have no chance of ever really being good unless they change ownership or whatever, because again, culture is everything, and they have zero of it, and we will beat them at home for sure.
I agree with you. The Browns, it'll be interesting to see what the Browns look like getting in November, but I don't have faith in the Browns. I grew up in Ohio, so I've known about the mistake by the lake for a while.
Yeah.
So the end of quarter 3, week 13 at Houston against the Texans. CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback, more than likely he'll be playing that game. What are your thoughts on that one?
My thoughts on that one, we better win that game. If we don't, we're in trouble.
That's one of those, if you're not winning those games like the Bears game
Right.
and the Packers game, especially in the Raiders and Washington, those are the layups. And if you're not winning those, then all of a sudden you got to find one against the Chiefs.
Right. Yeah. You have to win the game against Houston. I think they will win the game. They need to go down there, and again, we'll be able to see what kind of team this really is, because that's a game where you just get on a plane, you go down there and you play, you win, you come home, and you're not even second guessing it. And that's what they should be doing in that game. So I have them winning that game.
Well, you got them pretty strong here going after three quarters here, Coach. You have them at, if I'm doing my math right now, I did go to a private school. 8-4 is what I have you.
Okay, I'm there.
And I am at 5-7.
Okay, so let me ask you, Rob, what happens if they're 5-7 there? Do they make a change at quarterback? I keep hearing that the Stidham guy's doing pretty well.
I don't think Stidham's a franchise quarterback. I think they stick with Russell Wilson throughout the year. It could be a learning curve for Russell Wilson with Sean Payton. And if they go, because a lot of it depends on how well, if Russell Wilson's throwing for 250 a game, 3-1, and maybe they can't run the ball. So maybe the defense is not doing what it's supposed to do and making stops when they need to. And if all the games are close, if they're getting blown out, they're not going to get blown out with Sean Payton. That's for sure. Yeah, but at 5-7, it just depends on how it looks. Like, are you making the playoffs? You got 5 games coming up to finish the year with, I would say probably at least 4 out of the 5 are winnable. And you could finish really strong with the schedule coming up. So I wouldn't be cutting bait quite yet.
Okay.
But if you lost like one of those Raiders or the Washington game,
what if Russ is looking like he did last year? And they're 5-7 at that point.
I don't think there's a chance. I think there'll be a injury at that point.
Okay.
Where it's going to be like, oh, Russ has got a hammy, let's give him a break here. Because they'll do it respectfully for Russ. They're not going to just pull him for Stidham. Like, Stidham's not a franchise quarterback. You're not going, hey, let's go Stidham and see what we got. If you put Stidham in, it's probably because you lost the Browns game and you're 4-8 and you're going, if we go 1-4 to finish the stretch here, we're now in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes.
Yeah, I was going to say, so let me ask you this question, Rob. We're at 5-7. You have them at 5-7.
Yep.
Just a scenario. And
yep.
Wilson's not playing great. He's playing kind of like last year.
Yep.
The old word, we use it all the time, tank.
Oh, yeah.
Do you take it from there and you bring in the other quarterbacks just because you're not really worried about winning at that point? You're worried about getting a good draft pick at that point?
If I'm the owner, if I'm putting my, Greg Penner hat on, absolutely. I'm going like, hey, Russ, how's that something – you're hobbling down the hallways a little bit. Are you sure you should be in there? Oh, Cortland, you know what? We just, you're having a great year. The problem that comes with the players is they usually have bonuses, and you're really clearing your bonuses in quarter 4 with your stats typically.
Yeah.
So they don't want to sit out, and players always want to win. I'll never think of players going out there like, oh, coach doesn't want us to win this game. They always want to. It's the owners and the GM going, it's not the worst thing in the world if we don't win this game.
Well, I could tell you if they're 4-8 and 5-7 at that point, I want them to lose.
Yeah.
I'll just be honest with you.
The worst place they can be is an NFL purgatory as a 500 team.
Yes, we don't want that.
It's like, now it's one thing, like I would say this year's probably not the worst thing to be there if things look like they're turning around, because you go, okay, they're learning the Sean Payton ways. They've got to, 9-8, 8-9 right there. You go, okay. And they're turning it around. They're okay. But like if all of a sudden next year they're 8-9 again, it's the worst place to be in the NFL.
No doubt. You have no chance.
So
you're at 5-7. I'm at 8-4.
you're the optimistic of the group.
So I'm the glasses half full guy.
Oh yeah, and the 8-4 would be great. Like I think we'd all be celebrating. I work in sales a lot, so like 8-4, you call people, they're happy.
Yeah.
Then Monday mornings are much easier to make that call. Like, hey, how you doing over there? Hey,
and we can actually be excited as fans here now.
Yeah, and you have them winning 3 in a row here. I got them at 2 in a row, so they're going in. They're coming into December 10th, starting the quarter 4 in LA against the Chargers.
Loss. I think Justin Herbert's too good. And I love Austin Eckler. Another
Chargers do Charger things, though.
They do, but it's there. I have them winning against the Chargers at home. I have them losing against the Chargers there.
Now, this is the fun one. I have them losing against the Chargers, too. Especially in LA, and winning 2 in a row. I think it's really hard to win 3 in a row in the NFL. No matter who you're playing. And that's kind of where you fall into a trap game, even with the Bears. If somehow the Broncos win week 3 in Miami, all of a sudden you're going to Chicago and you're reading your own headlines at that point.
Yeah.
So, but week 15 is a fun one. It's a flex game, so we don't know when it'll be played throughout the day, but it could be a Sunday night game. It's in Detroit at the Lions.
Wow. This was one of the ones I looked at and I just really couldn't get a feel for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always go back to the Lions. They're playing the Lions.
They have their stereotype, that's for sure.
But are the Lions breaking through?
I think they are.
I'm gonna say loss. That pains me to say that, but I'm gonna say loss. If it was home again, I would say they win. But I think that's a loss.
What about
the Lions are getting there?
Yeah. What about, and they just picked up that rookie running back out of Alabama, Gibbs.
Yeah, he can run. He can really cut and fly.
And then Christmas Eve at home against the Patriots.
They're going to win that game. They're going to win that game at home.
Oh, I don't have them winning that game. I have 3 losses in a row here. You have them breaking the losing streak.
So now what are you at? 5 and what? 10?
5 and 10. And you're at 9 and 5.
Wow.
I mean, you're right now, if you're right, they're playing these last 2 to make the playoffs, because with the added team in the playoffs, but if who do you pick as playoff teams this year? It's like they got to probably win at least 10 games to have a realistic shot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And so they're at 9 wins going into the last 2 weeks, and they're playing the Chargers here at home on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, I have them winning that game at home.
I think they're going to win that game because Chargers do Charger things.
Yeah.
I like the ones that are like, I think they're going to probably actually win out of the week 14 or 15, one of the two. If they win against the Chargers, they'll probably lose the Lions or vice versa.
Yeah.
So, and then week 18, they're wrapping it up in Vegas against the Raiders.
This is my personal opinion on this. I think they're going to beat the Raiders in Las Vegas because I think by that time in the season, the players for the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be wanting to have a complete revolt against their head coach and don't care if they win or lose.
It's going to be 1-2-3 Cancun. That's going to be what they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree with you. I think they're going to win. So as the results here get tallied up with my fancy dancy Excel spreadsheet, we are quite opposite in our selection here. You have them at 11-6, which that's probably at least it'd be a successful year. They should be making the playoffs at 11 wins. The AFC is always interesting in that, with especially now with the Jets being better than you could have potentially 3 teams out of the AFC East.
Yeah.
So, and I have them at 7-10.
So 7-10. Let me ask you: if they 7-10, what do they do with Russell Wilson next year?
At 7-10, you're not getting a rookie quarterback next year. So I think at 7-10, and assuming he wasn't, and he played better than he did last year, I think they just write out the Russell Wilson deal.
Okay.
I think they start building the team around Russell Wilson and start planning for who's the next quarterback. They may start taking more aggressive, like a 3rd round quarterback, like what Tennessee did with Will Levis this year, things like that, where they're going to look and go, hey, if we can get a little fortunate in the third round, but I go back to they traded so much away for Russell Wilson. They have to replenish their depth and their offensive line, defensive line, and just you're going to have some big questions coming up by then with like the Surtain contract and what are you going to do with players like that as the year, at the end of the year. So you kind of go, you may just be stuck with them. It's like, so you know how it is with coaching. It's like, you may not like the guy playing, but what's your replacement option?
No. And I agree with that. And I also think this, if they're 7-10 with the free agent signings they had this year on their offensive line, then we're in trouble, because I believe the guys they signed for their offensive line are going to make a huge difference for them this year.
Do you think how many, like, what's the ratio of pass to run? Like what are they going to be doing? Are they going to be a run first team? Are they going to be?
I think they're going to be run first team, but in the NFL, I don't think it's ever 60-40 run pass anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that McGlinchey and I can't think of the other guy's name, but the guard they signed, I think that's going to make a gigantic difference in their team this year. And that's what I'm basing a lot of this on is I think they're better up front. And where they got killed last year was up front.
Yeah, Russell Wilson was running for his life a lot. But he does hold on to the ball too long, though.
He does, but they just get I watched it, again, when you're at the game, you see so much more, but their offensive line just got demolished last year. It was not good. And I don't know if that's part coaching. I like the old coach that they had, the guy that used to be the head coach for the Vikings, but he was
Kubiak.
Yeah. They had some guys there that could do some things, but I think the free agent signings that they had on the offensive line, if they end up 7-10, it's a really, really disappointing year for them.
Yeah, no, I think 7-10, it'll be a disappointing year, but I'm looking at it and there's some losses I have in there that could be wins and vice versa. I just see them more as a 500 team, probably more than a playoff team. I know Sean Payton has called it out there that they're a playoff team or playoff caliber team, but I think he's also trying to pump the guys up from having a number of bad years where you kind of get your guys to believe playing better than they actually are. Because I also just don't believe they have the depth. They're already showing weaknesses in the wide receiver room with some injuries going on that hopefully they can recover from and guys stay healthy, but one or two guys go down and then that's the NFL too, though. That goes for any team. So if you avoid the injury bug, you could have a great year. If you get bit by it,
how much you trust them winning on the road? I think that's a tall tale sign of a good NFL team, that they go in and they don't care if they're playing at home or they're playing on the road.
I don't trust them on the road yet. Clearly, I have them losing in Chicago in the first 4 weeks. And I have them losing, obviously, at the Chiefs, at the Bills. I have them winning in Texas. But most of the road games, I have them losing, except against like teams like the Chargers at the end of the year. So the first 4 games will, show who they are. And that, especially what's happened over the years, is since preseason for the starters have been more and more limited. A lot of teams treat the first 4 games as developing who they are. The Patriots have been phenomenal at this. We're like, how many times do they go? They start 2-2 or 1-3, and everybody goes, oh, finally they fell off. And then they come. Here they come. They win 6 in a row, or they go 5-1, and they're right back in the hunt. And you can't start too quickly in that sense of setting I think they set their expectations on what they want with their rosters and develop the first 4 games of the season. And then that's why week 5 against the Jets will be so interesting.
Oh, I think week 4 against the Bears.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I don't want to say it's a turning point game, but I think it's a turning point game, to be honest with you, because I think they win their first 2.
Yep.
I think they lose at Miami. And if you come into that game against Chicago and you can go in there and win on the road in Chicago and come out of the first 4 3-1, now all of a sudden you have some momentum, you have some confidence, you have all of those things rolling for you going forward. But if they go into Chicago and lay an egg and they come out of that 2-2 With the Jets coming in with Aaron Rodgers, I think that could be a problem. But I think if they beat Chicago in Chicago, now they come home against Aaron Rodgers, I think they win that game.
You're way more optimistic on this than I am. I want to ask you coming up about trade rumors and how that impacts players. I'm super curious on your thoughts on this. But first, I want to ask you about Vistage. It's a group you're a part of. You're a chair. Why are you a chair, and what are the benefits of Vistage?
Yeah, Rob, thanks for asking it. You know, I chair CEO peer advisory groups, and it's an amazing experience for me to be able to chair those groups where I watch CEOs and business presidents, business leaders sit around a table, help each other and guide each other and support each other, give each other advice, give each other value, get value from each other. It's an amazing thing. And it's just, you know, I've been reading this book called um, it's a new book I've been reading, and one of the things they talk about in the book is having a mastermind group and surrounding yourself with good people. And that's what we do at Vistage. We surround ourselves with good people, and it's all non-competing industries, so you don't have to worry about that. And just help each other and support each other. It's phenomenal.
Very cool. If someone wants to get connected with you on that, what's the best way for them
Yeah,
to do that?
just get a hold of me. It's Coach Joe White 97 at gmail.com.
Okay.
And I'll get you going on it, tell you all about it. And it's just a great way to learn and grow and keep progressing in your business life and your personal life as well.
No, absolutely. Very cool. So I want to ask you about being traded in the professional world. Usually it's like it's getting fired and just finding a new job. If you're, you know, us muggles in the real world trying to be something else. But like you played professional baseball for a little while. Were you ever in part of trade rumors, or would you get
No,
traded?
I wasn't, but I can tell you that the people who are in trade rumors and so forth, it's not fun. Um, Basically, your employer's telling you, or you're hearing that your employer doesn't believe in you anymore
Mm-hmm.
and is willing to give you up for something else. So when you're sitting there hearing and listening to trade rumors and so forth, how much productivity are you going to give that team that's trying to trade you? Because it's just human nature, and it doesn't do good for your confidence and everything else. Now, when you get traded, it's kind of the opposite, because when you get on the other side, you're like, man, somebody really wanted me.
Yeah.
So now you get to, you know, it's like the guy Lorenzen who threw the no hitter last night for the Phillies.
Right. Yep.
You know, he was having an okay year with the Tigers. I was listening today. He's had 2 starts for the Phillies. He threw 8 innings the first start, and he threw a complete game no hitter the second start. No one on the Phillies has gone past like 6 innings for the whole year. This guy's come over and done that twice, because now all of a sudden somebody in his mind, somebody really believes in him. Somebody wants him to be there. So it's really an interesting dynamic, and you bring that up. It's just an interesting dynamic, because on one hand, somebody's giving you up, but on the other hand, somebody really wants you.
But in that no man's land of when you're just like, we're thinking about moving Joe around.
Yeah,
It's
no good. It's not fun. It's
because last year wasn't Cortland Sutton, and even like some of these wide receivers are kind of murmured in rumors to try to get get more draft picks because they were short on draft picks. Like those rumors are gone now. They're not happening right now, at least from what we're hearing. So do you think that could impact how guys like Cortland Sutton and some of these guys in the wide receiver room play?
I do. They're human.
Yeah.
And when your name's getting bandied around about being a trade bait for right before the draft to get more draft picks, so they can trade Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and all that for draft picks and all that, you're definitely sitting there thinking, man, they don't want me anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and then the trades don't happen, and all of a sudden you're back in that same locker room, the locker room that you thought they didn't want you in.
Yep.
You know, you're a human being. And unless they have somebody there, you know, like a Sean Payton, who's a strong influence, and he talks to these people and said, hey, you were never on the trade block. You know, those are just rumors, blah, blah, blah. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to come in and you have to stroke the egos of those people, because they were told that they weren't wanted in that locker room in their mind.
I think of it as like people in the workforce. It's like, how many times have you thought you were going to get fired?
Yeah.
And those days, weeks, whatever that time frame is, and then you actually get pulled into your boss's office, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Things can improve, but we think you're doing a decent job. Keep it up."
Yeah.
Also you're like, "Oh, wait, oh, you're keeping me?"
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what kind of, when I look at those wide receivers, to me, and most of them will do this, Rob, the great athletes always want to prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So in their mind, hopefully what they're doing is coming out on the field every day going, man, I'm going to prove you wrong that you were talking about trading me. This is what you would have lost if you would have traded me. That's what great athletes do. And some of them, like a Jerry Judy's kind of coming up on a contract year. I'm not sure if this year or the next year, but, is he sitting there thinking, I'm going to show you what I can do, and then I'll leave on my own if you didn't want me before, or something like that. You don't know what's going through their mind, but hopefully, again, I know I keep reiterating this, but hopefully the culture there is telling them, hey, we want you, you're here, you're part of this, and you're part of our rebuild. You're part of us doing great things this year. And, they go from there.
As we wrap this up, Coach, what are your thoughts? Like, you have them as Broncos that is 11-6. What encouraging thoughts can you give us? Because I'm the pessimist in the room. I'm the dark cloud.
My closing thoughts are this, and I said it earlier. They upgraded their front offensive line and defensive line. I think they upgraded it by signing Allen from Phoenix, the Arizona Cardinals, with that defensive end, defensive tackle, 3 technique. And I also think that they finally solidified their right tackle. I think they get Garrett Bowles back, who wasn't there all last year. They have a brand new guard who Pro Football Focus last year had as the second-ranked guard in the whole NFL. And I believe in what they have done up front. And I've always thought that they've had good receivers. I've thought they had good running backs. And I think Russell Wilson will be good this year. I really do. I don't think he's going to be anywhere way he was like last year. And I think they're going to be better. I just think they're better up front. And I think they did a good job in the free agent market doing that.
No, it's interesting. Interesting thoughts there. I traded away Russell Wilson in my dynasty football league, fantasy football league, because I didn't believe. So here, one last question here. I'm throwing this one to you here without really giving any prep for it, but there's 7 teams in each conference that make the playoffs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Bills, are they a playoff team?
Yes.
Dolphins, are they a playoff team?
Not sold.
Patriots?
No.
Jets?
Yes.
Browns?
No.
Bengals?
Yes.
Steelers?
No.
Ravens?
Yes.
Titans?
No.
Colts?
No.
Jaguars?
Yes, because of the division they play in.
Yeah, then you got the Texans. So you have Chiefs?
Yes.
Raiders?
No.
Chargers?
Yes.
And then the Broncos.
I'm already at 7?
You're at 7 already. Broncos are 8. I left them for last to see how many you come up to.
All right, so it would be
one of those teams would have to, and you said you didn't believe Miami, and the only one I could argue disagree is maybe the Steelers. But
so who would you? So let's say, Rob, the Broncos have a chance to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Who do you think they're battling it out with of those 7 that I named, or what is your 7?
Well, they're not gonna battle the Jaguars because they're just gonna win their AFC South more than likely. The Titans are one I would say I'd be curious to see how they do. I think there's a lot of prove it in that team, like between Derrick Henry and Tannehill, and we'll see on that one. But I just don't see the South putting 2 teams in the playoffs. I think the Jets could kick the Broncos out of the playoffs, especially if they lose that game. So they lose that head-to-head and that opportunity there, because between the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets, when you have 3 in the AFC, that means there's only one other team that's not a division winner making it. And then you have the North with the Bengals, Steelers, and Ravens. I just don't see him making that big of a leap over everybody. I think the AFC West is just going to send one team, and it's going to be the Chiefs. And I think
so it could be the Broncos. The way I look at it, the way we talk about it. So the Broncos, the Ravens, and the Jets are
Yeah.
fighting for 2 spots possibly, and
Yeah.
I guess you could throw the Dolphins in there. So 4
Yeah.
teams fighting for 2 spots. Is that kind of how you look at
it? The wild card teams, like, because like AFC East, more than likely the Bills are going to win it.
Yeah,
The North, probably a coin flip. Probably the Bengals.
Bengals will win that.
It's what they would be expected. The South, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I believe, are favored to win that,
Yeah.
but the Titans probably aren't far behind. And the AFC West, you have the Chiefs. So then
Right.
you have 3 other teams coming out of it. And I think it's pretty easy to say that the AFC East will probably send 2 teams.
Yeah.
So now you're down to 2 other spots. And
I forgot the Chargers. What about the Chargers?
No, you just said you didn't think the Chargers. I think you did say the Chargers. I didn't write it down. So
What do you think about the Chargers?
I like Kellen Moore as the new offensive coordinator they got, and so that gives. I think they are the dark horse in all this that could really. I think they're at that danger 500 spot for years now, but they got Herbert.
He's phenomenal.
So I just, yeah,
he's so you think that we can throw them in with that group of teams fighting for the 2? So there's 5 teams fighting for the last 2 spots.
Yeah, and that's how you want it going in the last.
But you don't have the Broncos as one of those, so you have 4 teams going.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be helpful here. It's like, but you listed 7 teams before the Broncos that could make the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right.
And so one of those would have to not be there. And like, who knows? The Jets could implode. I could see that with Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't,
Yeah.
If Tua doesn't stay healthy, the Dolphins could be very rough for them. Burrow's already facing some injuries, so the Bengals may not be as strong, but they usually start weak and finish strong anyway. And
it's kind of interesting that the Broncos play the East.
Yeah.
They play those teams. They played the Dolphins. They played the Jets. And, and of course with Belichick, you never know about the New England. They're always going to be right there.
Yep.
And the Broncos play them all. So they're, they're in charge of their destiny here. If they can beat some of those teams, they might make it.
Yeah. We'll see what happens here, and we'll talk again. And I'm just not as optimistic. I feel like I'm more the realist. I got to be I am jaded by sports radio. I love sports radio, but I remember I was working in Michigan at the time, and I was driving around doing some pickups and deliveries for stuff and listening to sports radio, and all these Detroit Lions sports, prognosticators are going, oh, we could be 4-0. We could be we could be 7-0 by the break, maybe 7 and whatever it was, like really high hopes for the Lions. Just doing what we did, going through the schedule. Is the year they went 0-16.
Yeah. Well, just remember this, Rob. I want to reiterate this. Left tackle was not there all season last year.
Yep.
Right tackle was a swinging door.
Oh yeah.
Okay, they've solidified those 2 spots this year.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and you solidified a spot up the middle to make yourself stronger up the middle too. And I think the guard from Wisconsin Whitewater is a player. So I think they're better, a lot better up front. Now, again, you go back to what you talked about with the depth. If one of those guys, let's say Garrett Bowles gets hurt again, do they have the depth to cover? They didn't last year for sure, because their offensive line was a sieve last year. But when you plug those 3 guys in compared to what they had last year, you're a better team.
Oh,
a lot better team.
I'm a big believer as you build on the inside out when it comes to football. So we'll talk more about that next time we do this. I'm curious on how you weight positions and the value of them in the NFL. Like what's the most valuable? I think everyone will say the quarterback, but then what's next in line? Where do you put your resources and your efforts to fill those holes? So Coach Joe, I appreciate it today. This was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love doing this. This is great.
So I appreciate the time, and we'll talk soon here.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Have a great day.
You as well. And